What's going on, folks? How are you? Back again. I know it's been a minute since I made one of these Facebook Live videos, but I feel like it's very important that I get this information out as quickly as possible to other real estate agents in the business who are expand, helping to create more housing opportunities, create more business opportunities, to create more jobs, to generate more tax revenue, to then be reinvested back into their communities. I just feel like it's important. I hope this lighting is okay. I feel like maybe it might be a little dark, but whatever. We'll go with it. But wanted to just hop on here, and first I want to give a shout out to my friend Mike Baker, who is the publisher of Albany Real Producers. I don't know if that's going to be backwards. But anyway, this is the first issue, and I know he's been working real hard on this publication, which is basically informing and inspiring real estate agents. This goes out to the, I believe it's the top 300 agents according to volume of business that they're doing, according to the MLS. And basically it has various real estate agent spotlights, services, really interesting things about top producers in the Albany real estate market. So congrats, Mike. You can check them out on Facebook and online. Just check out Albany Real Producers, do a search on that, and that's where you'll find it. Anyway, for this particular Go Live, wanted to share with you my top 10 tips, which I combined into a guide, which I'll write this out ultimately, but I figured real quick, why don't I just share these 10 tips, or actually 10 steps that you can do to help a commercial client lease commercial space, whether they're looking for retail space, industrial warehouse space, office space, whatever they're looking for. You can represent them as their tenant representative in that transaction, help them to locate the appropriate space, help them to negotiate a fair lease at a fair price that everyone's happy with, and get them into that building, get them to expand their business into a new location, create more jobs, create more tax revenue, get you paid up, and move on to the next one. So it's a great way to build up your commercial real estate business. And really, if you also work in residential real estate, these are good opportunities as well. There's no reason why you can't add some commercial real estate to your portfolio, to your arsenal, to your services that you provide, being a commercial tenant representative, basically bringing these commercial clients to these spaces for lease and helping them to negotiate their lease terms and get them into that building. But these are the 10 steps that I follow whenever I have a tenant representative client, and it's taken me a lot of trial and error, mostly error, in putting this all together. But I found that this is the most efficient way to do it, the best way to maximize your time, because time is money, to maximize your client's time, to maximize the landlord's times and the leasing agent time, to help everybody save a lot of time, because in the end, it's all about getting these deals done faster and moving on to the next one, or getting more referrals to help more business owners to lease commercial space. And let's face it, it's a great way to grow your business. If you're in the real estate business, being a commercial tenant representative it could be a full-time gig if you follow these 10 steps. It's a great way to build your business. So let's hop right into it. These are the top 10 tips, the ultimate guide to commercial tenant representation. Number one is you want to learn about your client's business. So you don't have to have the whole history, but basically get the gist of what they do, who are their customers, how long they've been in business, what is their current location, do they have other locations, or maybe this is their first business location. You want to find out all this information first. Number two is you want to then move on to learn about what sort of commercial property they're looking to lease. You want to ask them questions like, well, what sort of location are you looking for? What sort of lease term, which is how long that lease is, anywhere from 1 to multiple years. You want to learn about how much square footage that they need for their new location. You want to learn about their monthly budget, how much are they willing to spend and go towards rent, towards utilities, towards insurance, those types of costs. what sort of parking needs they might have, how many employees they need to accommodate for that parking. Do they need to be on any sort of maybe public transportation routes? Ask them about what sort of storage space needs, what sort of ceiling heights they're looking for, clear span if they're looking for industrial warehouse space, internet access. Do they need the super fast type of internet? What sort of security is required for their property? What are their proximity to the highways? If they're a distribution center, they want to be fairly close to getting on the road for their trucks. So anyway, those are just some of the things that you want to look for when you're speaking with your client who's looking to lease commercial space. Moving on to step number 3 is you then want to search for space for lease that matches their criteria. So at this point, you want to hop onto your commercial MLS and you want to do a search. Maybe they gave you what sort of square footage they were looking for, what's their usage, where they want to be, what particular area, and you narrow down the search in the commercial MLS, and you might find, depending on what sort of property, what sort of use it would be, maybe several listings to choose from. And then you want to look at these listings, and then this is very important. You move on to the next step, which is you want to actually communicate with these leasing agents who have these spaces for lease, because sometimes the space might already be leased, but it shows in the commercial MLS that it is available. So it's very important that you want to reach out to these agents. Again, save everyone a lot of time, a lot of frustration, a lot of headaches. It might already be a fairly stressful process for your client because they are looking to expand their business and spend a lot of money on a great commercial space that you're helping them to lease. So this is vitally important that you reach out to these leasing agents. And what I usually like to do is a 2-step process. I like to first send that agent an email, because sometimes when I call them, instead of emailing first, they might be on the road, they might be at a showing, and I ask them about a certain particular property, and they might have a lot of listings. It might not be top of mind. They might not have that information readily at hand to tell me, whether it is available and whether the landlord would allow for the particular type of usage. So I find that it's better to communicate first via email. And in this email, usually in the subject line, I'll put in the address, 123 Main Street, usage question. So again, in the subject line, I'll put the address and then usage question. That way, when the agent gets that email, they'll see the address, they'll probably recognize it as one of their properties for lease, and then they'll see usage question and then figure, oh, this is Jim possibly bringing me a brand new tenant for my building. And then in this email, I just keep it really brief, keep it really simple. I'm just bringing up one of my example emails that I've sent recently. Usually I start off with, hey, name of the agent. I'm representing a tenant who runs and then here's where you want to talk about what sort of business your tenant is running. In this case, it was a youth sports training business. And we're looking into warehouse space with high ceilings to allow for football tosses. Your listing at, and then the address, might be a fit. So basically in that first line, I'm just saying what sort of usage that my commercial tenant is looking for, and what are some of the requirements. I mentioned the high ceilings, then we're looking at warehouse space, and then your listing at whatever that address is might be a fit. Next line. Let me know if the landlord would allow for this usage, and I'll share the info with my client and let you know about a showing. Thank you, and then sign your name. So in this email, it's quick, it's to the point. The leasing agent can just quickly, they'll probably see it on their phone, look at the usage, recognize the address, follow up with their landlord if they're not sure if my particular usage would be allowed in that type of commercial space for lease, and if it's even available. And if so, then they'll get back to me and say, yes, landlord would allow for that type of usage. Let me know when you want to book that showing. However, in the scenario where the commercial real estate leasing agent does not return this email for whatever reason, maybe within 12 to 24 hours, I'll then follow up with a phone call. And then in that phone call, I'll say, hey, sent you an email. I'm representing a tenant, and basically rehash what I talked about in that email. And they might say something like, hey, didn't get that email, missed it, and then would appreciate that phone call. or would say something like, "Oh yeah, I've been meaning to call you back and talk to you about this particular usage." So that's what an important step you don't want to skip is you want to look at the commercial listings, see what's available, and then communicate with that leasing agent. Ask them if that landlord would allow for your type of tenant's usage, and if so, then you'll follow up with a possible showing. Okay, moving on to step number 4. Let's say that you did book that showing. At the showing, you want to let the leasing agent, this is the agent who represents the landlord's property for a lease, you want to let this leasing agent lead the tour because they're familiar with their property, it's their listing, and you're basically there to provide backup. You're just kind of advising about the type of property that they're looking for, maybe just kind of rehash what your client is looking for, and then let that leasing agent do their job. Let them market and sell that property to your client, and if it makes sense, then you can move on to the next step. But it's important to not try to lead that showing because you're not familiar with that property. Let the leasing agent do their job, and you're just there to provide any sort of backup or take notes, things that you want to follow up on, any sort of questions that you want to ask on behalf of your client, anything that you might see that could be a potential red flag you want to point out maybe later on when you're consulting with your client to see their feedback on what they thought about that space for lease. But basically, you're just there to provide backup and let the leasing agent do their job. Step number 5. If the client is interested in leasing that space, then you submit your letter of interest, or LOI, which has your client's list of tenant improvements, what's their usage, what sort of terms they're looking for in the lease, that is how many years they're looking to lease it for, what's their proposed rent. Basically, you want to include the things that you're looking to negotiate in that lease, but in this LOI. And the reason why you want to do that is it's much easier and more efficient to negotiate on an LOI, which is actually a non-binding letter of interest communication with that landlord. And it's easier to negotiate on that LOI before you go to the lease. The lease should be the finalized document, right? It should be actually what your client is looking for in that lease space, which you already negotiated and came to terms on a meeting of the minds in the LOI process, which is this step. Okay. All right. That brings us to step number 6. If the LOI is approved, all parties are happy with it and they sign off on it, then you move on to the lease. And this is the actual legal document drafted up by the landlord, and this includes the terms and the rent and all the other things that you negotiate on in the LOI. It's now in that lease, and basically it's the real document. So after the landlord submits to you the lease for your client to review, it's important that they review it with their attorney. Now, it's a legal document. You can't overstep your boundaries and play lawyer when you're the tenant representative. You already did your job. You got them to see that space and negotiate to that lease. Now's your opportunity to just let the lawyer do their job and review that lease with their client. Okay, next, after the lease is signed, then you might have to do things just depending on what are the stipulations. Either you might have to attend any sort of town planning approval meetings and attend other things like that in order to get approval for that usage for that new tenant coming into that area. Just depending on how that goes, either the lease can be signed before that meeting or after that meeting, just depending on how you want to work that one out. Okay, so after all the approvals, after the lease is signed, after people are already moving in and they're ready for their new expansion, you want to make sure to collect that commission check. So in the commercial lease, typically the landlord pays the tenant representative, and that means that there's no out-of-pocket cost to that tenant to work with you as their tenant representative. So you get paid by the landlord. So it's important to collect that commission check as step number 9. Moving on to step number 10 is maybe after letting that tenant move into that space after about a month or two, you want to check in with them, see how things are going, see how they're liking their new location. Hopefully they love it and they're really grateful to you for helping them to find that space if it wasn't for your hard work and for your negotiation skills in helping them to come to a fair deal with their lease that will let their business to thrive and grow and create more jobs and create more opportunities, create more housing, create more businesses, and basically become something very beneficial to that community and to all of humanity. All from your hard work, and that's just a great thing for you to do as a real estate agent, whether you're working in residential or in commercial. I would definitely recommend that you check out any opportunities that you can do in commercial tenant representation. So hope you found this helpful. If you haven't already, go ahead and download your free real estate investing audiobook at www.jameskcommercialrealestate.info. I'll leave that link in the description below. But it's a free audiobook to help you to avoid any sort of the pitfalls that you might find in real estate investing and help you to grow your money, creating more housing, creating more jobs, creating more opportunities in your community. So thanks for checking this out, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.